While the Hawks have made a drug bust of more than 700 million rand, the consignment came through the Ngqura port, close to Port Elizabeth. It's said to be the second biggest cocaine bust in South Africa. For more on this, we're joined by Shaun Shelly, his head of SA policy from the advocacy group TB HIV Care. Shaun, thanks for your time tonight. Firstly, what's your response to the discovery of this cocaine?
Well, I don't think it's that surprising, actually. I think it's good work on the part of the Priority Crimes Division. But in fact, the fact is that a lot of drugs are trafficked around the coast of South Africa. And we're both a consumer country and a transit country for drugs, as many of the countries in Africa are.
And of course, when we look at this particular consignment that has been found, it's described as having the street value high enough to build an entire village. Where would this cocaine have ended up?
Well, look, we're not sure. I don't think it was destined for South Africa. It was well hidden on the ship. I'm not actually sure whether it was destined for. As I say, South Africa is both a consumer country and a transit country. So it might have just been docking here, but if it was destined for South Africa, it's a fairly large haul for the South African market. But unfortunately, even big hauls like this don't really disrupt the drug market at all. So I think it's going to be business as usual. There might be some people that won't be able to access the particular drugs that they're looking for a short period of time. But these operations are so huge that this is just a drop in the ocean. And really, we've been trying to disrupt them for a long time, and it just doesn't work. They don't get disrupted. The profit margins are too big and the quantities are too big.
How do you think it's able to remain intact and so rigid? Is it because more often than not the people that are caught are in fact not the people that are the drivers behind these operations, given even the transnational nature of it? You know, in this particular case involving Brazil and India and I think Singapore, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. So I think that's really the key question, because it does seem that the real kingpins and the real criminals don't get arrested. Our typical impression of what a drug dealer is or a drug trafficker is very different from the reality. In reality, these people are sort of hiding in plain sight. They are sort of transnational criminals. Drugs just happen to be the commodity that they're dealing in. And often those drugs in the African context, for example, methamphetamine is often traded for animal products. It's just another commodity to them. You know, they're not thinking about any other aspect from it, and the profit margins are huge. Prohibition has driven drugs into an underworld, and we now know that basically these guys, the top guys, are paying for a lot of political campaigns around the world. They've got everybody in their pockets. And so a bust like this is usually the result of some warring faction fighting against another one. But typically speaking, it's not going to be the top man that's going to face the consequences. It's going to be the lieutenants and the captains of the organization who will suffer the consequences. One of the last ones, nobody suffered any consequences. They found it, and the only single case that was brought to court, that was dismissed after many years because it just took too long, you know. These are incredibly complex cases, and there's a lot of money involved, and so people are going to protect their financial and commercial interests.
And let's look at that last one. I believe you might be making reference to the 400 million rand drug bust, also in the same area in about 2010 that took place there. Given the fact that this has then been identified as a port where, you know, copious amounts of cocaine is, you know, as seemingly used to come into the country, do you think enough of an effort is being made to perhaps increase the security there and perhaps close it, at least close it off to those that want to use it for peddling drugs?
Well, the problem with that is first of all, there are a lot of other interests that are being served by this. So sometimes there's not even the will to do that. We don't know in this country, but certainly in other countries that's been shown. But besides that, if you have a look at this particular container, I think it was under 1,300 other containers. If you had to search every single one of those containers and check every single container, you'd bring the economy to a standstill. It's impossible. And as soon as you do tighten up the security at one place sufficiently, they're just going to move to another place. It's incredibly easy to move these types of commodities around the world. In fact, some people would argue it's easier to move drugs than it is to move cash around the world. But I don't think that tightening up the security or slowing down the realities of commercial trade are going to solve the problem. This is a much deeper systemic problem, and you know, really we've got to look at the whole way we approach drugs in society if we're going to stop this kind of trafficking. But these, remember, are not drug traffickers. They are transnational criminals, and they will trade in whatever's going to have the biggest profit.
All right, let's leave it there for tonight. That was Shaun Shelly giving us his take on that particular drug bust earlier on today.